Hey, welcome to the TV channel, and today we do have a final game, which is the Bermuda Triangle Vert against the Angel Feather Gabriel. And this is actually a GURGUITLESS tournament, where Gurguit is actually banned for the short tournament. So we shall see how the game will flow, and the Angel Feather will go first, running to the Great Researcher and hitting to the Gabriel there, discarding the critical trigger. And now the Bermuda Triangle will run into his Great Researcher here, looking at top 5 after getting the quick shoe. And he does actually get the edge, discarding to the drop zone. And no further commitment will be done, swinging at the Vanguard like this, with no triggers. How will the Angel Feather actually play out his turn? He does try into this Grade 2 triple here to actually take back the card from the damage, and actually doing a rescue check, which is basically a drive check. He does call the Grade 2 here, which does another rescue check. Next, he's going to commit the Grade 1 here, which is actually a promo, whereby if you do eat a damage this turn, which he already did, you'll be a 17k attacker, or rather a 17k booster. He does call the Scaling Angel here to actually put the card to soul, putting the Great Researcher in the damage zone, which he can later take it back if he wants to with the Gabriel. He does swing with this Grade 2 first, which is 19k, given that it does get power plus 10k if it does eat a damage this turn, and the Vanguard will have a crit given the rescue check did check 1. Hitting to 2 damage here, and the Vert will be trying to attack on his Grade 2 turn. He does strike into his Grade 2 here, this lot. He does call the Great Researcher here, which doesn't proc because the Great Researcher needs to proc from hand. He does commit the ally here to further aggressive the turn, given that the Great Researcher does plus 5k if you do have a column. So he does decide to swing at the Vanguard, which is a total power of 21k, which is just a 15k guard. And now how will the Angel Feather actually play out his turn? He does strike into the Gabriel here, which is actually a very strong card. And now he does call the No-Cell here. What does No-Cell does for the deck is actually do a self-damage on himself in case whereby the enemy does damage deny him, because the Hammer requires a counter plus 3, which will be seen here. On place you can actually counter plus 1, which is Superior Call a card, which he does Superior Call the Great Researcher here. And let's do one rescue check. And the Gabriel will use his skill here to use counter plus 1, soul plus 1, to just take back one card from damage to hand, and 1 card to the bottom deck. And then you do 2 rescue checks. It does get a critical trick here to pump at the Hammer. And it does swing at the Vanguard. And the Gabriel does plus 10k to the front row if you do eat 3 damage this turn, which is already done. So the Kanzen will be forced out here. And do note that Hamel is already 3 criticals all by herself, so any critical trigger drive check here will be game. He does drive check into a critical trigger here, and Hamel will be a big boy using his counter plus 3. And actually the Bermuda do eat all the damage, but he does eat into a huge trigger here, which will save him, giving him at 5 damage. But he does eat 2 damage trigger here, and the right column will not be able to attack if I am not mistaken. Actually it's 42k, so actually few a 15k guard. Very big columns from the Angel Feather player, and the Bermuda Triangle will be his turn, and the No-Cell does return the damage at the end of the turn, which he does so here. The Bermuda Triangle does strike to the Vert here, getting a force 1 to the side, and will be able to do the multi-battle with the Vert here. He does call the Grade 2 to bounce the Great Researcher to draw 1 card, and then he can discard 1 card right here. He does discard the Grade 2 same copy. And does call the Grade 2 Prism unit here to look at the top 7 to add more Prism units to hand. And unfortunately he does miss the search. And now does use the Vert skill right here to actually bind 1 Vert card from the field or the drop zone. And it's called the Great Researcher as well as the Vert. And does hit to the SP Vert right here, and will be riding it because he deserves it. He does use the Grade 2 to swing at the side first. Oh no, he actually does reconsider and just swing at the Vanguard. And using the right side Vert to swing first. Then using Vert to actually use her skill to actually bounce 2 of those units back to hand. And then Superior Calling the Grade 2 Prism from the bind zone. And the skill will activate because it's on place. Looking at top 7 once again. But he does miss the search once again, very unfortunate. And the Protect 1 will be forced out. And do note that it's triple drive because Vert did activate her skill. He does try check to a double trigger here, pumping all to the side, and a critical trigger will force the Angel Feather to actually throw his guards out. But the Angel Feather do have the Sentinel crit, and this is a very easy job for him. And do note that actually Gabriel does counter charge 2 in a sense, so it's a very strong card and does allow Hamel to always be rather online. So he does use the Greater Triple R skill first to actually take back the Hamel from the damage zone and then super calling it. He does reconsider actually going for the Great One Rescue check here, which does have on place ability, whereby you can actually discard 1 card to take 1 card from the damage to hand, then doing 1 more rescue checks. And there's 3 rescue checks so far and does hit into a critical trigger here, but pumping the crit to the Gabriel and the power to the Hamel. And now he's going for the further drive checks, or rather sorry, the rescue checks. So a total of 5 rescue checks has been done. And he does get another critical trigger here, pumping the crit to the right rear guard on the right, and the power to the Hamel once again. And then calling a Lamento here, which is a guard retreat. This guy rather is not having any fun allowed for the Bermuda player, as every column seems to be almost guard restrict except the right column. So he does go for the 1 pass here, but critical trigger will be found here given after 7 try checks, and the game is over, and the game will go to game 2, and the Vert will go first now. Running to the Grade 1 here, which is actually a niche clone from Luat, looking at top 7 for the Grade 2 or the Grade 3 Prism units, and does hit to the Grade 2 Prism unit here. Now he does call the Creature on the side, looking at top 5, and does hit the Chocho, just discard it, and passing the turn back to the Angel Feather player. Running to his rescue check and does have an on-hit ability that on the Vanguard circle, if you do hit it, you do draw 1 card. So he does swing at the Vanguard. And looks like the Bermuda Triangle does go for a no guard here, and a 1 additional draw will be gained. He does strike into the Grade 2 Prison unit here, and hopefully he does hit something this time, given that he did miss a lot in the previous game. Now he does hit into 2 Grade 1s here, and one of them will be bind because if you do add 2, you can bind 1. And now he does call the Creature once again, and hitting to the Vert SP. Now he does swing with the Creature there, and swing with the Vanguard. Getting a draw trigger here, which is not exactly nice, but you know, triggers are always good. He does go for the Grade 2 here, which does have a rescue check ability. You should be going for it. Doesn't hit any trigger though. He does decide to swing at the rear guard, damage denying the Bermuda Triangle player. Which is actually a pretty smart move, you ask me, because he is going second after all. He does guard for the Creature here, so the Bermuda Triangle will be able to keep up the aggressiveness. Let's try to the end here, going for the force 1, given that he doesn't have any controls to work with. Any right here is just to gain force markers. Now he does swing at the Vanguard like this. Try checking it to another draw trigger here. Like I said, it's always good to have triggers, but draw trigger in this case against Gabriel does seem a bit, I rather say, down. The aggression still continues, and how will the Angel Feather actually punish it? Unfortunately, he does try into a Nocel here, and now does use his skill to actually eat 1 Nocel to the damage zone, to filter the deck in a sense. Now he does call the Creature and he does want to hit the Gabriel, but he does miss the search. Now he'll be swinging a Nocel at the rear guard again to damage deny once again. So the Bermuda Triangle does have a slight mistake there, and he should have actually noticed that the Angel Feather is trying to damage deny him and should have allowed the rear guard to be pushed to the bottom so that he is forced to attack the Vanguard. But then again, it's a 12k Vanguard to a 13k Vanguard, so damage deny is still going to happen. So he rides to another end here to gain another force marker. So he does swing at the Vanguard like this without any other commitments. Twin driving to a double blank here, very unfortunate. And the Angel Feather will be top decking into a Gabriel here, gaining another protect 1 marker, which he does so here. Now he's used the graveyard skill straight up. So blasting the nocelle, getting a Lamento back to hand, putting the other card to the bottom of the deck to do 2 rescue checks. A Hamel is seen, so it's always good to see a Hamel there, because you can retrieve it very easily. He does use a Scaling Angel to put back the nocelle to the damage zone, then calling the Hamel to call the nocelle. The nocelle will be able to activate to self-damage deny, or rather self-damage again. So very strong play by the Angel Feather player to actually think this through. And now he does have 3 damage to work with, and the Hamel is online. Let's go for another rescue check here, taking back another Hamel. And does hit into a critical trigger here, so Hamel is already on 3 criticals. So he does swing with the Gabriel here for 30k power. And no guard will be introduced by the Bermuda player. Does stretch check into critical trigger here. Will be thinking it through whether to pump all to Hamel. He does do so. No second critical though. He'll be swinging the nocelle first, but the Hamel is being 4 crit, so he does reconsider here, and will be going for the Hamel 4 crit first, which is easily 60k, which is a 50k guard if I'm not wrong. So the opponent does have the shields, given that he does draw check quite a bit, draw triggers in the previous turns, and does decide to pass the turn to further damage deny, or rather limit the counter blast that the Bermuda Dragon will have. Now he does strike into the vert here finally to go for another force marker. Will be spreading out among 3 columns, and now he does call the Aqua here. So you draw 1 card, discard 1 card. Now does use the vert skill. Will be binding the Grade 2 Prism from his soul, and does call the vert. This should be a multi-attack turn. He does swing the Aqua here, will just be a 10k guard. And the vert will be swinging for 15k guard. The Vanguard will swing, going for the skill to bounce 2 units back to hand, and then superior calling 2 units. And do note that Grade 1 does have an ability whereby you can actually bind 1 Prism card to draw 1 card. And the Grade 2 will be able to give Tefano a 10k power buff. Now Triple Drive will begin here, and to hit a huge trigger which will push him to 1 damage, and the Angel Feather will have a harder time to push for game. He does swing at the Vanguard for 28k power, and now does swing at the with this Grade 2, which is a very big boy. 30k shield will be forced out. Now he does call the Hamel here to begin things off. It looks like he'll be calling the Grade 1 here, which will do another rescue check. So 1 rescue check so far. Now discarding 1 card to do 1 more rescue check, and there will be 2 rescue checks. So we do see a first critical trigger here, pumping all to the Hamel, so the Hamel will be 2 criticals. Or rather 3 criticals, sorry. And now Gabriel will do his rescue check too. So total 4 rescue check will be done here. No critical trigger here, very unfortunate for the Gabriel player. And now he's going to increase the rescue check here to 5. No critical trigger yet again. So far only 1. Now he does decide to swing with the Gabriel here at the rear guard. And does let it go. Twin driving to a critical trigger, another critical trigger. So basically there's 3 critical triggers on the Hamel, and you'll be doing a 5 critical damage. So if the opponent, or rather the Bermuda Striker, doesn't have any hand into guard, he will be basically dead. But he does have the shields, given that he did triple drive, and the draw triggers from the previous turn does help. If I'm not mistaken, this swing is actually 70k, so a 60k guard will be required. And that's swing on the side to further damage deny once again, and the vert is struggling quite hard if you ask me. Or rather, how is actually Gabriel balanced? Now he does strike into another vert to gain another force marker, putting to the side this time. Now using the vert skill to go for the triple drive, which is the only thing he can do right now given that he doesn't have any counter blast to work with. The potential damage denied from the Gabriel is super strong, and I'm very curious why Bushido didn't do anything to it yet. So he does hit into a huge trigger here which doesn't go off, but it will be a very welcome 20k shield. And we shall see whether the Ancient Feather player will be able to do the 5 critical once again. He does call the Hammer to start things off, to call the Great Rescue, to do another rescue check. So 1 rescue check so far, and the second rescue check will be done here. And we do see a critical trigger here to start things off, and now Gabriel will be going for the third and fourth rescue check, sorry. And we do see another critical trigger. So basically 4 criticals on the hammer already. So just 1 more and it will be 5 critical once again. And we do see it. So hammer is again 5 critical triggers. Man, this is just crazy. Now it's going to go for another rescue check here. If I'm not mistaken, it's the 6th rescue check already. And we do see another critical trigger there. Damn man, this is just crazy. And we haven't seen a twin drive just yet, so it will be basically 8 drive check this turn from the Gabriel deck in a standard format. Now PG will be forced out here. He does twin drive and hit another critical trigger. This is so unfortunate for the Bermuda player, and this should be game. Thank you for watching till the end, and do consider subscribing, dropping a like and a comment if you do enjoy the content.